Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's FSM1 webinar. Let me begin with a simple question. If you live to 100, would your finances be ready? With life expectancy rising, it's more important than ever to rethink how we plan for retirement. It's not just about savings, it's about sustaining your lifestyle and peace of mind for many more years. Tonight, we'll explore why long-term retirement planning matters and how you can build a strategy that supports you well into the future. Our topic for this evening is Reimagining Your Retirement to 100, which is presented by Ms. Shirley Foo, Head of Retirement Services, Principal Malaysia. Shirley joined Principal Malaysia in 2008 and has since held key roles in product development for both Malaysia and Singapore. As a Head of Product Development, she is responsible for managing overall strategy and the full product lifecycle. Later on in 2020, she was also appointed Head of Retirement Services, where she leads the growth and innovation of the private retirement business in Malaysia. She has over 20 years of experience in various industries, including accounting, banking, education, and asset management. She holds a Bachelor of Arts Honours in Accounting and Financial Management and Business Studies from the University of Sheffield and is registered FIMM, RFP, and SRFP. Without further ado, let us welcome Ms. Shirley Foo. Ms. Shirley, over to you.
Thanks, Joanna. A very good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank IFAS, right, for inviting us to be here tonight at their webinar to share a little bit about retirement. Joanna, the first slide.
Yeah, I can see my...
Sorry. You go to the topic first. Yeah. Okay. Over the last few decades, we have all witnessed a lot of changes, right, into our lifestyle, from the food we eat, how we transport, right, how we, live our lifestyles, to even, our healthcare as well as our longevity. With all these changes that we have witnessed, right, even retirement planning is not spared from the need to change. And that brings us, right, to our presentation for today in reimagining our retirement to 100. Next, please. Okay, first of all, let's look at our retirement landscape. In the next couple of slides, I will share with you, where, or how our retirement landscape today looks like in Malaysia. What are the crises or the issues, pertinent issues that we are looking at, and how, the need for PRS in terms of supplementing our mandatory. Next, please. First of all, when it comes to retirement savings, we need to look at what is the reality or in terms of the issues that we are having, right? First of all, it's the fact that people are living longer. Based on the latest, data from the Department of Statistics Malaysia, a man can live to 73 years old, while a woman can live to 77.8 years old. Okay, and this is actually an increase, if you look at the statistics a couple of years back, right? What it means is that people are living longer. And in terms of retirement, what it means is that we need to have more retirement saving to sustain a longer retirement time, right? This is also, this is also actually, all right, we have to look at it from the fertility perspective, because from a fertility perspective, it shows that, there have been a reduction in terms of the fertility rate, right, where it has dropped from 2.1 to 1.6. What it means is that, we will have a smaller group of younger population going forward, right? And the generations, the group of older generations will continue to increase. Yeah. And today, Malaysia itself, is considered as an aging nation. And by 2056, Malaysia will become a super age nation. What it means? It means that, we will have more than 20% of our population which will age 65 and above. While living longer is actually good for individual like us, right? Generally, it's good, but it's only good if we have enough, right, to sustain for our retirement. So we need to plan for the future, right? As we mentioned earlier, with the changes, that we are seeing, the food that we are eating are now more nutritious. We have better health care, and all this has contributed to a longer life, right? A longevity. So in the picture that you are seeing here, you will be able to see that, the the word living to 100, I'll be prepared. This is actually, the theme of the EPF conference that was held middle of this year together with the ministry, with the government of Malaysia. So it gives us an idea that even at the national level, we are already preparing our population towards living longer. And we are not just talking about living 1 or 2 years longer, but to 100. So question is, from a retirement perspective, are we ready? What are we doing about it? And how can we, better hedge so that we are prepared for the retirement? Next, please. Okay. So with longer livings, we know that we need to have more, right? We need to have more retirement savings so that we can sustain our retirement life, right? Today, we do have an issue in terms of sufficiency. We can see it in some of the statistics that have been released by EPF, right? Firstly, is on not having enough retirement savings. So statistics from the EPF shows that, 6.3 million people, or about 48% of the EPF members, right, who are aged below 55 years old, have savings less than 10,000. What does this mean, right? The official retirement age for Malaysia is actually at the age of 60. And if you live up to 70 plus, which is what we've seen in the slide earlier, you will need to sustain at least about 17 years. If you live up to 80, it's about 20 years. Let's just say 20 years, So this 10,000 will only give you 42 ringgit per month. And we know this is a number that is not enough for us to sustain our lifestyle, right? On top of that, statistics from ETF also show that people who withdraw from EPF at retirement tend to exhaust all their savings only within 2 to 3 years. Latest numbers from them shows that 50% of these people actually exhaust within 5 years, right? So with all this, we need to know that we need to save more, but how much more? Today, the minimum basic saving that is, recommended by EPF is actually at 240,000, right? They recommended 240,000 as our retirement savings. But this is not enough, as inflation kicks in, rise of living costs. So with the latest Belanjawanku report, right, they have actually looked at, what are the amount of, that we need to sustain our lifestyle. So based on this report, an individual, a single person will need 2,690 in Klang Valley, right, to be able to sustain a reasonable lifestyle. So if we take 2,690 and we times it, right, with 240 months for a 20 years to sustain our retirement, we will need 650,000. Okay, with this in mind, EPF has actually introduced a new framework, which is called the RIA framework, which stands for Retirement Income Adequacy Framework. Based on this framework, they have actually increased the minimum amount required, right, for your retirement, right? Adequate, like we said, to have enough, right? Adequate is at 650,000. But they have also introduced 3 levels, right? So apart from the adequate, they also have the basic, which is the minimum amount, right? Which they have now recommended to 390,000, up from the current level of 240,000. Okay, adequate, is the level at 650,000, but they also have another level which says that, if you want to retire more comfortably, you look at the enhanced saving tier, which is now at 1.3 million. So this RIA framework will be effective 1st of January, and they will slowly increase the amount from 240,000. What does this mean? This means that, even EPF is recommending a higher amount, right? That means we definitely need to save more to cater to the changes, right? And if we live to 100, we need to cover not just 20 years, but 40 years. Yeah. Next, please. Okay. By recognizing the need, right, for the increase in retirement savings, right, we noted that, the need to have multiple pillars or multiple ways to save, right? EPF is actually what we call the pillar two of our retirement framework, which is mandatory occupational pillars, right? So back in 2012, the government of Malaysia introduced the voluntary pension scheme under the pillar three to complement EPF so that we can have more funds, right? More ways of savings to contribute to the overall increase in a retirement savings. Next, please. Okay. Once we know that we need to save, right? We need to save more. How can we do it? The question is always, how much do we need for retirement and how much more do I need to save on top of my mandatory? So World Bank suggested that, to get, right, achieve one third, to achieve two-thirds of our last round salary, right, as a replacement income rate, we need to save 33% or one third today. So we save one third for two-thirds in the future. In the landscape of Malaysia, we are actually quite lucky because we do have EPF, which is the mandatory pillar, right? For those who are, working, you are mandated to save, to EPF. Why I'm saying lucky is because, right, through this scheme, we would have contributed a total of 23% as our savings. So 11% from our personal employee contribution into EPF, and the employer will also contribute a total of 12%. That makes it 23%. So based on the recommendation by World Bank to save one third to achieve two-thirds in the future, we only need to save an additional 10% into other schemes, like voluntary schemes like PRS. Next. Okay. So what is PRS and how is PRS different, from EPF, from unit trust and all? So PRS is introduced, as a private retirement scheme. It is a voluntary pillar, right? And it's supposed to complement EPF to increase our retirement savings. So when we structure EPF, the government of Malaysia has actually structured it, right, with retirement in mind. And the account structure is actually very similar to EPF. So if you remember the old account structure for EPF before they introduced account 3, it is exactly the same as what you see in PRS. So in PRS, our account structure has two, which is sub-account A and sub-account B, where sub-account A, right, represents 70% of the savings and is locked in until the year 55 years old. So typically, this part, has strict withdrawal policy where you can only be withdrawn, upon death, upon permanent departure or any other serious, diseases. Okay. Sub-account B, which is representing 30% of the savings in PRS, provides a little bit more of flexible withdrawal. I would say that it is still restricted because you still need to fulfill, some of the criteria to be able to withdraw without a tax penalty. And that will be something like, housing, or healthcare purposes, right? If without purpose, you can still withdraw because it's flexible, but you will be subject to a 8% tax penalty on the withdrawn amount. And you can only you can only withdraw once a year. Next, please. Okay. In terms of EPF and PRS relationship, if I have a word that, if I have a word to describe this relationship, I would say that they are same, but different, right? They are same in the sense that they both share the same objective, that is to help Malaysians to save enough, have enough, right? To save more for our retirement. But the account structure is kind of similar, where they have both locked in, where you are not allowed to be drawn until you are 55. And this feature we know, is being put in place on purpose to help Malaysians to save. Because why? As a human, we are always attracted to spend, right? Especially when we have money. So instead of saving for retirement, we probably would have spent this amount for our trips, for the iPhone 17, and things like that. So to make sure that, we are able to save for our retirement, the restricted withdrawal policy has been put in place for both EPF and PRS. Yeah. So both are actually for long term, and both, are actually investing into securities. But the investments are very different in terms of EPF and PRS from an investor's point of view, right? Where if you're investing into EPF through EPF, you do not get to choose the type of investment, right? Investment decisions are being made by EPF themselves, and they can invest into a multiple securities, including, securities like even real assets, properties. They even go into private debt, private credits, and things like that. So the type of investables, by EPF is actually be decided by them, and it changes at the recommendation of the EPF team. While in PRS, you get to select your own funds. You get to select your own funds based on what your need is and what you want. Okay. So here, at PRS, usually you will have the different fund choices, right? Depending on your risk or your time base, the time when you retire, how old you are today, you decide, right? So you get the fund choices. Okay. You get the fund choices. And that's typically how EPF is different from PRS, right? Next, please. Okay. So for PRS, we can say that, there are some benefits to investing in PRS. And what is this? Firstly, is diversification, right? You are able to diversify your investments because you are able to make choices of your investments funds, which is under PRS, right? Then you can complement this to your EPF because you are segregating your investments in both EPF and PRS. So you diversify, from EPF. Fund choices, right? I mentioned this earlier. At EPF, you can't choose your investments because it's been decided by the investment team in EPF. But at principles, at PRS, you can actually choose the fund that you like or that you need based on your risk level, based on your time, to retire, right? PRS also instill, the savings habit because in PRS you can also do it through regular savings plans, which is similar to salary deduction on EPF, right? It is a complementary in terms of nomination. This is like a bill service that is provided, right, free of charge and is administered through PPA. And this is only for the portion of your PRS investments, right? I do want to highlight that if you are a Muslim, this nomination is only appointing, right, your wasi, and it's not your end beneficiary. Yeah. Okay. PRS is also creditors proof. What this means is that you are protected under the current regulations, right? In the case of bankruptcies, right? So it is protected. Last and not least, right? That PRS also have a tax incentive where you are able to enjoy up to 3,000, right, of tax benefit for personal income tax until the year assessment of 2030. Next, please. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this tax because it's actually quite important, right? This is PRS is the only one that offers you, right, the tax benefit. It is up to 3,000. What it means is that you have to look at your personal income tax bracket and you will be able to see how much savings you get by investing 3,000 into PRS. So the table you see in front shows that, what are the relevant tax bracket in terms of your personal tax deduction, and you'll be able to see the tax saving that you can enjoy from here. So it goes all the way, until 900 ringgit, right? For a tax bracket of 30%. Huh? Next, please. Okay, so this is where you will see. Next, please. Can you please click? And one more time. Yeah. So this is, a sample of the income tax form that we are seeing. This is based on the 2024 form, you'll be able to see that, the tax deduction is actually a separate line from your insurance as well as your education and medical insurance. So it is a line on its own, and you will be able to capture these, as your tax benefits up to 3,000. Yeah. Next. Okay. Why I say this tax, benefit is actually important because you do not get this in unit trust, right? And this tax benefit can actually boost your income. So let's just look at, the illustration that we have in front of you. In this illustration, right, we choose a duration. We assume that you have invested 10 years because at the end of the day, retirement is actually for long-term investments. So the annual income here, we are taking, the range of 100,000 to 400, which means the tax bracket for this person is actually at 25%. So at 25%, the tax saving will be about 750. And 10 years cumulatively, the tax saving, for 10 years would be 7,500. In this example, we are also basing on the maximum tax advantage. So we look at 3,000 per annum. So a total of 30,000 contribution in 10 years time. So I just pull out, one of the fund, right? One of the fund, which is the principal PRS plus Asia Pac ex Japan equity. And we look at what is the since inception return. So it is 8.54. So what it means is that when you invest 30,000, 3,000 yearly, a total of 30,000 at 8.54 annualized return, you will be getting about 44,590.14 in terms of your fund value, right? So your return from here is actually about 14,590 made from the 3,000 that you have invested, right? In normal circumstances, we only look at it this way because we always look at the fund return. But in this case, because we do enjoy the tax benefit, from investing, every year we enjoy 750 from that. Cumulatively, we have additional 7,500. If you add this 7,500 to the fund return, the overall total return from your 30,000 investment is actually 22,090. And that, increases your overall return from generated from this 30,000 to an adjusted return factoring, of 73.63%. And you can see this is how, the tax benefit can actually help to boost your overall return from the capital that you have invested. Next, please. Okay, now that we have understand, right, the some of the issues that we have, and the need to complement our mandatory so that we can save enough, to last us for our retirement savings, we are going to share with you a little bit about the products that we have, in principle. So at principle, right, our retirement products, goes beyond just a product. We call it solution, and we are looking beyond, what traditional providers are providing. Yeah. So traditionally in the past, in the last few decades, a lot of people will only focus on the fact of, accumulations, and this is the stage where you are working, you are saving, right? But as we go on, the need, to go beyond accumulation arises. And this is where, we created and we design, right? And we bring to you solution, retirement solution rather than product. Next. Okay. So we were talking about, going beyond accumulation, right? Because traditionally, what people usually relates to in terms of retirement is always just on accumulation. It is the stage where we are working and we are contributing, so we are saving for retirement. But the fact is that, as we live longer and longer, right, from retirement, to the end of our lifetime is actually increasing. So we need also, a product, a solution to help us navigate through this phase. Okay, retirement age at Malaysia is about 60, but because withdrawal is fixed at 55 years old, people may, retire early at 55. So from 55 or 60 years old to 80 years old it is 20 years. This is assuming based on the current life expectancy in Malaysia. But if we take, a forward look, especially for the younger generations, they may even live all the way, to 100. And that means, that's another 20 years. So a working life we accumulate for 37 years, but in decumulation, right, at retirement, is actually 40 years. So accumulation and decumulation is both equally important. And that is why at Principal we introduced the PRS end-to-end solution, right, to offer, solution for retirement planning for our investors. Next. Okay, so today at Principal, we actually have 20 fund choices to cater to your need, right? We have, two categories for funds. First is the risk-based funds. And this is the traditional funds, right, that you will see, right, that is based on risk. So very simple, you determine what is your risk, whether you are aggressive, you are conservative, and you buy or select or invest into the funds based on your need. Yeah. So it can be based on risk, it can be based on, a certain market segment, right? Or a region, all right, to meet your needs. 3 years ago, we introduced the date-based funds, and this is, what we call the target date funds, right? Is part of our Retire Easy solution, which is the end-to-end retirement solution. So it is actually a series of it. So we have all our funds in Islamic as well as conventional. Next, please. Okay. When we look into providing the solutions to our investors, one of the things that we always look at is, trying to solve issues, that our investors are facing. So when we design the product, we ask ourselves, as an investors, what are the issues we are facing? Okay. So we look into this and we identify a few key, right? And you can see, some of the questions and some of the concerns that our investors will have. Firstly is, we always hear from investors is that they do not know which PRS funds to invest in. There's a lot of PRS funds in the market. What is right for me? Which one should I choose, right? So once they know what fund they want to earn, they then ask, about the risk, because there's risk-based funds, and to invest into the right risk-based funds, you need to know your risk. And fact be told is that, most of us do not know what is our risk appetite is. In simple questions, if you ask them, what is your risk appetite? They may tell you that, oh, I'm aggressive. Yeah, I want high return and therefore I'm aggressive. But if you turn the question the other way around and you ask them, how much loss can you sustain? You will be surprised that, a lot of time we will say that we cannot sustain loss. But does that mean that you are still aggressive? So there is some confusion there, and it's not so easy to really determine what is our risk appetite, right? And therefore, it's difficult for us to choose our fund, right? There's also a question about, what kind of portfolio I should have. There's a lot of securities in the market. There can be equities, there can be fixed income, there can be money market and all. But what kind of mix should I have? What kind of securities I should be investing in? So a lot of time, the investors also do not know what kind of asset allocation mix they should be having for their portfolio, right? Once you're in a fund already, investment 101 tells us that, we need to rebalance into our fund, our portfolio, right? So, but question is, how should I rebalance, right? What do I need to do about it? And even if you know what you need to do, the next question leads to when do I need to be balanced? Because at retirement, for retirement investments, right, it is for long term. You can be investing for 40 years, 50 years, and all. So the call for the timing to rebalance is also very important. But a lot of time, many of us will not know. Even if we know how to rebalance, we do not know when we should rebalance and where do we rebalance to, right? On top of that, we are all very busy, right? We all have very little time for ourselves. And when we come to investment that is very long-term in nature for retirement, right, it requires a lot of discipline as an investors to monitor, to track our portfolio, our investments, and then to apply the rebalancing over a long period of time, you know. And therefore, the last, issues or concerns that we raise here is where the investors will say that they do not have the time nor the resource to actually monitor their portfolio. So for all this in mind, right, with all this in mind, we can literally sum it, to summarize it to say that, there is a need, right, for simplicity, because we just want things to be simple, so that as an investors, we just focus on the discipline to save and leave all this complexity in terms of retirement investments, and all to a professionals. Next, please. Okay, so with that in mind, we introduce and bring to Malaysia a solution of what we call Retire Easy. This is actually our end-to-end retirement solution that covers from accumulation into decumulation, right? And is split into two parts. So in accumulation, right, we use what we call the date-based funds, or, target date funds. In decumulations, we created a income fund. So target date funds is actually a date-based funds. As the name suggests, you have a target date to it, and the target date is the ideal retirement age. Okay, ideal retirement date, right? So based on what we observe and learn from the United States, because Principal is a company, right? It's a US-based company. What we observe, from our headquarters in the US is that a lot of the investments for our retirement are actually into target date, because it is simple and it meets the needs for our investor. And so we bring this, product to Malaysia, and we put it as part of our accumulation solution. So for a date-based funds to work, right, we cannot just offer one fund, but we need to offer a series of funds. So as you can see, the four light boxes on the accumulation phase, we have the four different funds for accumulations. Okay, Retire Easy 2060, 2750, 2040, and 2030. Yeah, we call it vintages here. Okay, so accumulation, because we are making it easy, right? You just, as an investor, you just choose, the right vintages based on your year of birth, which reflects your age, right? Because each of these vintages will have a maturity date, and that maturity date will coincide with the group of investors in that vintages, so that they all assume to be retiring around that time, right? So for example, for the vintage of 2060, these are usually for the young people. They are probably in their 20s, right? And this group of people at maturity, which is at 31st December 2060, they will age between 55 to 60. Okay, so it is actually the normal age of retirement, because this is the official, 60 is the official age of retirement in Malaysia, and 55 is the age where they can be drawn out from PRS and EPF, right? So in this scenario, so if you have chosen 2060, the investors will only need to invest in that particular fund throughout their life until they retire. So it makes it very easy for them. They don't need to change from funds to fund, right? They don't need to look into the rebalancing or the risk profiling, because within the fund itself, we will address all this complexity. I will talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. But do note that, the accumulation phase will end at the target date. But the solution doesn't end there, because we also brings you the decumulation solution. Okay, so this solution comes with an automatic switching feature, where at maturity, which is at 31st December of 2060 in our example, right, the investors as well as the assets, lock, stock, and barrel will actually be switched into income fund automatically. So no actions needed from the investors. We move you in when the fund is matured, right? When you are moved to income fund, you start your decumulation phase. Okay, but the true decumulation does not start until you set up a withdrawals, because this is where you need to decumulate, to reduce, right, to withdraw for your livelihood because you're already retired. But at the point when we automatically switch you in, you may not have retired, right? Some people works a bit longer, right? So maybe at the age of 67, you are still working. You do not need your money yet, right? You do not need to withdraw from your PRS to sustain your livelihood. You can continue to earn, leave the balances in the income fund, continue to earn, right? Continue to earn, but at a lower risk, because this income fund is designed, right, to invest into income generating assets, and it is around a moderately conservative risk profile, right? So you only start to truly decumulate when you start your withdrawal. So we noted that, traditionally we offer partial withdrawal as well as lump sum withdrawal. But we also noted, from the statistics we shared earlier, that people who withdraw lump sums tend to exhaust very quickly in a few years. And with that, we recommended regular withdrawal plans. And these regular withdrawal plans is important, right, for us to continue to invest the remaining balance, continue to generate returns so that the balance that we have, the savings that we have, can last us longer. Next. Okay. So how does debt-based fund work? So here we are actually looking into target date funds, and we look at how, it works, in such that it provides you the simplicity. So earlier I shared that when you choose the vintages, for example, 2060, you remain invested in that one vintage throughout your life until the fund is matured. How we do that is that, right, the fund will be managed, right, based on its glide path. What is the glide path? It's something that is computed, taking into consideration of a lot of factors, such as demographics, such as long-term capital market assumptions and all, to know that, what are the projected, right, ideal risk and return profile that an investor should have over time. So the chart that you see in front shows you the glide path, right? It's an illustration of the glide path. It's not the actual glide path of our target date funds, but it's meant to show you the mechanism. Okay, so based on this glide path, you will see that if you are a young investors, right? For example, 2060 fund, you are a young investors, you're only in your 20s, you have about 40 years to your retirement, for example. During the younger years, right, when you are 40 years from your retirement, you should be taking more risk to generate return because you have the time to ride through volatility, right? With that in mind, the portfolio will have more, will have more assets in risky assets such as equity, and it will have a lower portion in less risky assets such as fixed income. And this is truly, to ensure that in the early years, we are able to maximize the investment return for the investors who are young. And because you have the time, until your retirement, the long period of time, right, you can actually ride through volatility and any loss, in terms of the risk that you are taking, you can actually make a comeback over the time, right? But as we grow older, we ride through the time, right? We move on, to our middle years. The portfolio will actually de-risk. It de-risks, automatically, right? And it de-risks, gradually. So you move to your middle years, and the portfolio, from a risk perspective, right? Risk and return perspective is more about balancing it. And as we get nearer and nearer to the retirement, this de-risking will continue to happen. So until the point that you get nearer to your target years, you are then moving into capital preservation. So at capital preservation is a total 180-degree difference, from your early years. You will now, your portfolio will now have more portion allocation into less risky assets such as fixed income, and we'll have more allocation into less risky asset, which is like fixed income, and have lower allocation into high risk assets such as equities. Yeah. So this is to ensure that, we as an investors, as we age, the portfolio will always be adjusted so that its asset allocation will meet our ideal risk and return of that age. Okay. So the fund itself, in terms of target date fund, you may ask what kind of fund is this? Is this a mixed asset fund? Is this an equities fund? Is it a debt securities fund? And how the strategy is like. So I can share with you that target date funds actually have an unconstrained investment strategy. What do you mean by unconstrained investment strategy is that there is no preset limit in terms of what it can invest. So there is no fixed allocation in terms of its equity allocation, its fixed income generation, nor does it has any, restrictions, any limit set in terms of, countries exposure, regional exposure, and things like that. So this flexibility is actually to allow the fund manager who manages it, right, for the 40 years to change its investment strategy to cater to the portfolio that needs to be de-risked. Okay, that needs to be de-risked. So the asset allocation is not fixed. It will gradually, change. And the change, typically is to ensure that, the de-risking happen to for the investors so that we can always, map the asset allocation to what we call the ideal risk return profile of the investors. Next. Okay. Decumulation solution, as I mentioned earlier, our decumulation solution is investing into the income fund. So the income fund has been designed to invest into income generating assets. It's not just a fixed income fund, it's not just a money market fund, but it invests into income generating assets. So both our target date as well as our income fund, which is the whole Retire Easy solution, is actually a global fund. So in that sense, right, we invested in foreign assets and the fund will take on some FX risk. And because of that, this income fund under the decumulation solution actually has a risk rating, of moderately conservative and not conservative, yeah. And as I truly mentioned, decumulation solution, a big element of it is actually on the withdrawal because it is to ensure that, we withdraw it over time rather than, lump sum to protect, to ensure that we can continue to earn. So at Principal, we have what we call the regular withdrawal plan, which we have introduced, as part of the decumulation solution to help our investors to slowly withdraw to meet their lifestyle need, but keeping the remaining balances, in the account, right, to continue invest and continue to earn at the appropriate risk and return profile for a retiree. So what is this RWP? RWP is our regular withdrawal plans, right? At Principal, we offer two options of regular withdrawal plans. Option one, which is based on fixed amount, which means you fix, right, the amount you want to withdraw, right? And option two is fixed number of payment. We have 4 different frequencies for the withdrawals, which is monthly, semi-annually, quarterly, and annually, right? So you select it, right? And you select the frequency. You select an option, you select a frequency, and you just wait for the money to come to you based on the frequency. So in option 1 for fixed amount, you will choose, for example, 5,000 ringgit a month, right? And based on that, we will be withdrawing from your fund 5,000 to meet your lifestyle need, right? The remaining balances that you have will continue to be invested. It's very simple, to sign up for our RWP, just sign up the form, and submit to our principal office. Yeah. But do note our RWP, facility is only available for those who are above 55 years old. Why? Because, in PRS, remember you have a lock-in feature that you cannot allow or you are restricted in terms of withdrawal until you are 55 years old. But once you hit 55 years old, you are free to withdraw without tax penalty. Therefore, we do not recommend a withdrawal plan before you are 55 years old, and hence we are only offering this RWP security facility to our investors who are age 55 and above. Next. Okay. We completed the part, to introduce you to our debt-based funds, which is under our Retire Easy solution. Now let's look at the risk-based funds, which is the other type of funds we have. Okay, risk-based funds is actually very simple because you just determine what is your risk level and you find the fund that has the risk which has that risk rating. Okay, so from a risk perspective, you will have different funds that is under the risk category of conservative, moderately conservative, moderate, or aggressive, and each will have a different portfolio mix, right? Typically, an aggressive will have more allocation into equities, right, which is a higher risk asset, and conservative, right, will have higher allocation into safer assets like fixed income, right? So the illustration there, the few pie charts there will show you how, typical asset allocation looks like for our conservative, moderate, and growth, right? As well as our Retire Easy Income and other, funds like the Asia Pac. Okay, next. Next, please. Okay, in terms of investments options, PRS funds actually offer two investments options, which is different from unit trust. Okay, in PRS, we do have what we call the default option, or we also known as do it for me. So under these options, if you select these options, right, what we will do is that we will put the investors into the right fund based on your age or your year of birth. So here we recommend looking at the year of birth because if you look at age, sometimes you'll be wondering, I'm 65, I'm 55.5. Does that makes me a 55 or a 56? I'm 30.8. Do I look at 30 or do I look at 31? Right? So to avoid all this confusion, we recommended to look at the year of birth because your year of birth is fixed. So based on that year of birth, you will be put into the ideal, right, vintages for the target date funds, right? And you will stay invested in that fund until the fund matures. Okay, because all of you will share the same expected year of retirement. So do it for me, right? Typically is provide a very simple solution for people who just want to have that, just want to save. So you just focus on your discipline of saving, right? You don't have to bother about, choosing what fund you go to. You don't have to worry about rebalancing. You don't have to worry about what is your risk, right? And whether you are de-risking. So this is a solution for people who wants that simplicity, right? We also have the do it myself options. Well, this is good for, an options that is good for people who wants to make their decisions for their own portfolio. So here, right, under this investments option of do it myself, we have a combination of debt-based fund and risk-based funds. So all the Retire Easy funds, with all the targeted funds and the income funds, as well as all the conservative moderate growth and equity funds that you see in our product platform is available in the do it myself investments option. So here, if you select these options, you can actually free to make any combination, right? Mix and match on your own for your combination of your portfolio. You can even choose, right, the Retire Easy Target Date Fund that does not meet your expected retirement age because you may feel that, oh, while I am 50 years old, I want to take on a higher risk, right? A higher risk target date fund, noting that, this this target date fund will invest longer. You can play around with it and do your own mix and match under this regime. Yeah. Next, please. Okay, that's all I have for today for the presentation. Joanna?
Okay, thank you, Shirley. Now let's move on to the Q&A session. Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A chat box. Let me see. Okay. What is the advice if the fund subscribed is going downtrend but cannot sell the fund?
Typically, in a retirement investments, right, it is for the long term. All right. So there is always time where you will need to ride through the volatility. And that is why retirement savings, right, when it comes to retirement investment, you need to choose the fund that best commensurate to your need. While you cannot withdraw from the PRS, you are free to switch, right, within funds. So in times where you think that the market is good, you can be investing into higher risk funds. If you feel that the market is on a downturn, you wanted to de-risk yourself, you can actually switch to a more conservative funds, less aggressive funds based on the need, right? If you feel that, that all else fails, you want to go to a different fund by a different provider, PRS actually offers the transfer facility where you can actually transfer, you know, to from one provider to another provider. That gives you more choices in terms of the funds available for your investments. So it's not to say that, while you are not allowed to withdraw from PRS, you are all stuck in with the same fund. Yeah. But the word of advice I will give is that a lot of these funds that you're investing, you need to ride through cycles because PRS is for long term, right? Retirement is for long term. That's no way a fund will stay, positive all the time because when market drops, all funds drops. We just need to ride through the volatility, but to ensure that the fund that you are selected is suitable for you.
Okay. How do I do the free nomination? Through PPA or through the fund house?
You can actually do nominations, right? Both. You can actually do it through the fund house. You can also submit it through the PPA. So PPA is the final is the administrator for the nomination, and the nomination is based on your entire PRS investments that you have. Regardless of who are the providers, and you may have, investments with more than one providers, it's actually pulled together as and administered by PPA.
Okay. Please recommend fund that has performance that has an annualized return of more than 8%.
Um, Annualized return of 8% is actually more based on aggressive, right? In today's landscape, right, you will need to look at funds that is aggressive to give you that kind of return. But do note that, you need to ride through the volatility because, funds that are aggressive, they give you high return also come with high risk. Yeah. So if you want to know about the funds and our performance for principal platform funds, you can always, visit our website, which is at www.principal.com.my. You will be able to see, the performance of the funds.
Okay, what is the sales charge and management fee for debt-based fund?
Um, for this, you can actually get the information from the website, but typically the management fee is around 1.4 for Class A, which is retail. Yeah. Sales charge with FSM1.
There's no sales charge.
There's no sales charge.
Yes.
Yes.
Next question is, can switch partially?
Yes, you can. You can switch partially. You can switch any amount. You normally fund houses will expect, the switch, to be represented in percentage or total amount. Yeah. So you can just let us know how much you want to switch, partial or in full.
This next question is also quite related. How many times can we switch the fund? What is the restriction?
Typically, there is no restriction in terms of the number of switching, but because you are actually investing in PRS for long term, we normally don't see people do switching as often as it is. You normally only do switching when you feel that, the fund is no longer meeting your risk and return profile, your needs change, your circumstances has changed, therefore you are switching.
Mm. What happens if the investor passes away? Can you share about the beneficiary options?
When the investor pass away, you can do the claim based on, the normal law. It follows the normal law, but you can go through the nomination process. If you have nominated, you go to provider or the PPA, and we will be able, you know, to pay out to the beneficiary based on the nominations submitted, right? So for this, you need to reach out to the fund house, right? And we will be able to advise you in terms of what are the documentations required, right, to justify for that withdrawals for the based on the nomination. So typically, we will need the proof of the death of the disease, like the death certificates and all. So it's actually quite similar. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. How to lock in the profit? Normal unit trust, you can sell the units. How about PRS? Is switching the only option?
Yes, I would say yes. If you want to, lock in profits and all, right? You want to monetize it, right? It's only switching that is available so that you can kind of like monetize it because you cannot withdraw out. Yeah, but typically it's for long-term investment, so you should be growing with the fund itself. Uh, PRS doesn't offer distribution because by regulation, from the SC, income distribution we cannot pay out. The fund house, like us, we do declare income distribution, but it will be reinvested as additional units into the fund.
Mm. What is the switching fee?
Oh, it depends. You can actually refer to our website. All the information is there.
Okay. What are the advantages investing in PRS compared to EPF?
I think I shared the benefits earlier already, right? Each will have its own pros and cons. So, right, but it's mandatory. So we already shared PRS is actually a complementary to the EPF. So it is actually, to top up to be the additional savings, right, for on top of what you have in EPF. So in investments, right, one of the things we always learn is about diversification. They always say that don't put all eggs in one basket, right? So PRS can be an investment choice to complement your EPF.
Now this question is about under the do it yourself method. Let's say I choose RE 2040, though say I'm 55 years old. At what age do my funds get swept over to RE income so that I can withdraw? Can it be a shorter duration since I'm 55 when it first started?
Sorry,
Oh,
sorry, can you repeat?
this okay, under the do it yourself method, let's say if I choose RE 2040, though say I'm 55 years old. At what age do my funds get swept over to the RE income so that I can withdraw? Can it be shorter duration since I'm 55 when first started?
Okay, if you are 55 years old, you are free to withdraw without any tax penalty. But you have chosen, a fund that invested longer, which is 2040, right? So what happened is if you look at the fund features, based on the fund, the automatic sweeping will only happen in the year of 2040. So now we are, 2025 is another 15 years to go. right, before you reach 2040. So by then, you will need to add 15 to your 55 years old. So theoretically speaking, you will be 70 years old before it's automatically swept. But of course, right, because you are 55 already, you may need the money next year, let's say 56. So what you can do is you can actually switch, right? You can apply for a switch and you switch, right, from 2040 to the income fund so that you can start your decumulation earlier. Yeah. So this is the part where, if you do the do it myself and you have selected a fund that is one that is longer, you know, or shorter from your retirement, the an automatic when the automatic. Joanna?
Okay, maybe we will take one last question. Is PRS better to apply DCA compared to lump sum contribution?
Sorry, I can't hear you, Joanna.
Is PRS
Sorry, I can't
better
hear
to
you,
apply
Joanna.
DCA? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Your line is breaking. Yes, I can hear you now. Can you repeat
Yeah,
the question, please?
for PRS, is it better to do DCA or lump sum?
Um, Typically we will recommend, right, regular savings for retirement because you are savings over the time for your retirement and it is a long-term perspective so that you don't time the market, right? You don't time the market for your investments and you let the investments grow with you over time. Yeah, but you must ensure that whatever you have selected should either meet your risk base, right, your risk appetite, or it meets, in that base case, right, meet your expected retirement. Yeah. And also, when it comes to regular, you instill the habit there, right? Just like how you do it for your EPF, but it's deducted automatically, right? You typically will will not be taking lowest, and sell the highest. Yeah. So you need to ride through the markets, and therefore the discipline to save regularly is important. But regardless of whether you do lump sum or regular savings, it is good that you are investing. And the truth is that, the earlier you start, the better it is because when it comes to retirement saving, compounding interest is something that will benefit, you know, that will benefit and grow your investments a lot.
All right, thank you, Miss Shirley. Before we wrap up the webinar, I'd like to take a quick highlight on our ongoing PRS campaign. You receive RM40 in your MR cash account when you invest a minimum of 3,000 in any single PRS fund transaction between now and 15 December. For full details, please refer to the terms and conditions on fsm1.com.my. With this, we have come to the end of today's webinar. If you have further questions, feel free to send us an email at investhelp.my@fundsupermart.com. Once again, thank you very much, Ms. Shirley Fu, for joining us today, and thank you everyone for attending. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.